It's time for Supply Chain Now, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain: the people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Good morning, Supply Chain Now community. Jamin Alvadrez here with Jeff Miller, and we're very excited today to be joined by Wayne Cragg. And on this episode, we're continuing our Logistics and Beyond series. And Jeff, I know you're working on some things as well. If you want to tell everyone what you're working on with your platform.
You bet. Looking forward to launching The Supply Chain is the Business. And I think that dials in real well with talking with Wayne today and his view of the supply chain and commerce. He's in the middle of it. So that's what I'm focused on here is the supply chain and the role to getting business accomplished and getting things done. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Wayne.
Love it. And supply chain is the business.
Supply chain is the business.
Yeah, it always has been, but now it's very much everyone should be aware of that this past year. So quick programming note before we get started. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to find wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to Supply Chain Now channels, to Jeff's show, and the different presentations of Logistics and Beyond. So, and if you don't like it, even let us know because we're here to serve you, and we appreciate, we know your time is precious. So we're very grateful for any time you give us. So we're open to feedback. Okay, without any kind of further ado or delay, Wayne, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it very much.
And you're probably at any given time all over the United States. Where are you sitting and talking to us today from?
Absolutely. I'm just south of Salt Lake City. I was on the road for almost 2.5 months. And so I took a week's vacation, and I get to see my son at about 5 o'clock Mountain Time. So I'm pretty excited about today. And thank you for having me on.
That's very exciting. And I'll go ahead and say from the top too, I know we got to talk a little bit before, but Jeff and I, this will be a very informal type of conversation to let the Supply Chain Now community get to really know you. We don't want to, we didn't prop up a bunch of questions in advance. And so, Jeff, interject at any time, but we just really want to get to know you. As Jeff had mentioned, we talk a lot about supply chain and our audience too, and we're involved in different ways, but you're legitimately where the rubber meets the road.
For 8 years now, or a little over 8 years. So I've been driving.
Nice. So Wayne, the very baseline, tell us about who you are, what you're up to for some in the audience that may be new to you.
Thanks. Absolutely. I'm a Navy veteran, served during the first Persian Gulf War, not in theater. That's important. Our ship was the last one over there, came back. He invaded Kuwait. So I never did make it over there, but I served during that time. And, I came from hospitality management, director of housekeeping operations. I did that for 7 years before, and this is all open. I've talked about it on blogs, but I had a falling out with the last property and one person in particular. And I knew they said it was an epic resignation letter. So I knew I was probably going to have to find a different line of work, which I did. My best friend, Rich Campbell in the Navy, he's also with Transport America now, but he was actually running one of the C1 schools. And he said, Wayne, with your photography, you need to get into trucking. You could be your own boss. And obviously I manage people, I could manage myself. And he talked me into it. And he was one who flew me into Missouri. And I've been driving ever since. I do flatbed now. A lot of people have followed me. 2020, and I'm very open and honest in my videos. I switched companies a couple times, but a lot of things have happened with coronavirus and a lot's changed. I came back to the company I am now. I have almost 300,000 miles with them. I flatbed, and I do 48 states and Canada. When coronavirus, they don't much want us there right now, but I've done a lot of Canada, Rockies in the winter and stuff like that. So that's a short synopsis of my career.
Very, very nice. So that's interesting. The photography connection. You said your pal. connected photography and the opportunity to drive a truck. Can you talk a little bit about more about that? I'm fascinated by that.
I would love to. I don't know if you know, but I have 200 framed photos around the world. I have a Facebook page, Wayne Cragg Photography. It's Cragg, Wayne Cragg Photography and Adventures. And basically, the best photos I've ever taken has been in the last years while I've been truck driving. He kind of knew this. His whole family, 3 generations of truck drivers. For example, quick example is I stopped on New Year's Eve in 2014, New Year's Eve at Mount Shasta, at the pilot in Mount Shasta. And I could not, I got my camera. They made us stop early because, they don't want us out there with the drunk drivers. And it was one of the best sunsets and moonrises that I've ever seen on Mount Shasta. Some of the best photos I've ever taken was on New Year's Eve, got paid to drive, got out of my truck and was hiking, and just some incredible photos.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to look that up. Do you mind saying one more time where we could find those?
Sure. It's a Wayne Cragg, Cragg, Wayne Cragg Photography and Adventures on Facebook. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Wayne, I think it's _Cragg, or it may just be Wayne Cragg, Cragg.
Nice.
And
Nice.
it's so rare, Wayne, to find somebody who has so successfully merged his profession with his personal passion. That's something I think all of us aspire to. So yeah, it's delightful to have you on here talking about logistics and trucking and supply chain, but I didn't expect to hear this and to take away this early lesson that you are a person who's found a way to merge what you get paid to do with what your passion is. Bravo.
Thank you. And I think not enough truck drivers, and I've been saying this especially since coronavirus, you have to have a hobby or this trucking will eat you up. I do believe this is part of the 100% turnover is people drive their truck like I did. I stopped with last week with like 5 hours left on my 70. If I didn't have a hobby, if I didn't hike or get out and do anything, you're basically in the truck doing what? Doing nothing. And so I think it's so important to be able to get out of the truck, have a hobby that gets you out of the truck. You can have hobbies inside the truck, but get out, exercise. It can be whatever it wants to be. A lot of people have bikes now on the back of their truck. So I think it's super important.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up, and would love to get your opinion on it as it pertains to driver health and we'll call it burnout for lack of a better way to say it. And I gotta say, I feel like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I tend to be on the brokerage or the shipping side. I feel like I don't hear it discussed as much about helping drivers stay healthy and avoiding burnout, and what a lot of that alone time on the road can do to any of us. Um, is it talked about a lot within the trucking community, and maybe I'm just missing it, or do you think that's an opportunity for us as an industry?
It's starting to get talked about quite a bit more, to be honest with you. But our truckers may be hearing it, but are they taking that next step and actually following through on that? About 4 years ago, I was 50 pounds overweight, even with all my hiking in Alaska and doing all this other stuff. I got behind the truck. I wasn't doing what I should have been. I was not eating healthy. Once I lost the 50 pounds, once I started to get out of the truck, I can drive longer now. My ups and my downs aren't as wild mood swings. There's no sugar in my truck. Well, I should say I drink a Gatorade, which does have some sugar, and I gave up sodas 4 years ago as well. And everything, including my happiness, got better when I started eating way healthier in the truck. And it is being talked about more and more. And there's some success stories. So I think we just need to keep talking about it, though.
Yeah, there's been, I think it's long overdue. The physical demands, yeah, it's counterintuitive. You are immobilized for long stretches of time, and people don't understand how injurious that is to be sedentary, which is the nature of the job. You're not out moving around, and I think it's finally being addressed now. Overall trucker health because of just the nature of the work.
Yeah, I totally agree. And since coronavirus now too, I think we're getting a little bit more of a mental side of it too, with all the crazy driving. Now it has been calming down, it seems like, but there was a time and they called it pandemic speeding, and we all saw it. The mental side since coronavirus has taken a toll as well, because it has changed out here. I don't know if you know this, but near LA County, they've had more high speed impact crashes than they've ever had, and there's not many people out on the road. So things are changing that way too. So basically, you're absolutely right. We're sitting down in this truck doing nothing, but mentally we're processing way more with the craziness. So I'm not immune to it. It's just my healthier lifestyle lets me deal with it a little bit better.
Yeah, I'd read something about that. I'm speaking to you from the Atlanta suburbs, and of course, you know the complexities of trying to get long haul through Atlanta, and that was actually one of these counterintuitive things that happened in March and April. There were fewer wrecks, but when they happened, they were spectacular in a bad way. So it's funny how things changed.
Absolutely. I was in the Atlanta ice storm years ago. I was stuck in that ice storm around the Beltway where I don't know
Yes,
if you were in Atlanta.
I
Yeah,
was.
I
I
did.
was.
The Weather Nation. I had just popped up, not the Weather Channel, but the Weather Nation, and they were taking my videos. I was sending them and putting them on TV. I
Is
was
that
right.
for real?
I was stuck on the Beltway during that.
My
That was
goodness.
2014.
You and a couple 100,000 of your closest friends.
You know what? You know what about Atlanta? What I learned, people were making fun of Atlanta, like stopping, but it wasn't. I had to tell my northern friends up there, it wasn't as they expected. It started out as rain, and then it snowed and it just completely froze. And even up in Michigan, it would have stopped everything in Michigan as well. But
Sure.
one of the things that I saw in Atlanta, because I was stuck right on the side of the Beltway with everybody else, where people were opening their homes.
Yeah.
People were opening their homes all along the Beltway for people to come inside their homes. And a lot of people like us stayed in our trucks. We opened our trucks up so people could do basic things like go to the bathroom. And the homes and the people were coming out yelling, "Hey, are you okay?" People were running out of fuel and they were letting them in the house. It was an amazing, as bad as it was, I saw a part of humanity that you had to be there and watch how nice the people in Atlanta were.
Sure.
Oh, that's
Well,
beautiful. I feel like we don't talk about that side of we'll call it unfortunate events or unforeseen events enough. So thank you for sharing that.
Wait, you said you're driving flatbed now. I'm curious. Have you driven container, roll top, reefer? Have you driven others? And if so, what lands you on flatbed?
Oh, absolutely. Now, that's another great thing about doing this Trucker Wayne. I started it, by the way. Me and Derek McLean from C1, we started my journey as Trucker Wayne in school. So I've basically been following my journey. So I have moved around a little bit to want to be able to get different. And when people hired me, they knew that I've done intermodal for well over a year. I've done flatbed, did a lot of dry van, and then I did pull reefer for a week for JB Hunt so I could actually talk about it online here. So I haven't done any tanker, and I don't have any doubles or hazmat, and I do that on purpose. It's a stressful enough job, hazmat, and kudos to do hazmat and to do what they do. And an officer pulls you over, and if one place is not filled out, I just don't want that stress. So kudos to everyone out there who does that, because it's a very important job. But I've done quite a few things in my 8-year career. Oh, and what lands me on flatbed? The company that I work for, they just got voted for the 8th year in a row as one of the best places to work for.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically go to them because of the 48 states in Canada. That's what they offer for me. Great company, of course, but they get me. Like the last 2.5 months, I've put in, I think it's 23,000 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
they offer to get me out and run.
it's just interesting because I would imagine that there's some complexities, some of which you've talked about in your blogs about load management and load positioning on flatbed that doesn't happen in dry van. I mean, it's not an easier way to transport. It's got its own unique complexities, doesn't it?
It sure does. I just recently, and this is one of the things that I walk a fine line, because in my 8 years, I've never called out a company by its name. And a lot of people respect that. But just this last week, I was this close to calling out a shipper that didn't want to listen to me. The complexities, I have a 48-foot fixed axle. It's not spread. I can't move anything. Everything is math and weights. And I went to this glass place and they did not want to listen to me. And this is especially since coronavirus and you have the employees coming in and out. So I backed it in, disconnected. 5 hours later, it was a very long one. "Oh, you're good to go." And I go to weigh my load. I wasn't good to go. I was over 1,000 pounds in one of the axles. So I took it back and they made me detach again. I said, "Hey guys, I know my trailer. I know how much we can move it. hey, you need to get out of this area, detach it, we'll take care of it. We have overweight trailers all the time. So they moved it. Would not, basically, I'm a company driver now. I did owner op lease purchase. I would have just walked away, said, you guys can deal with it. I got to toe the line. 4 hours later, 10:30 at night in Texas, you're good to go. Well, I had to do my reset. I went up, weighed myself. They moved it too far the other way. All right. So they're closed on the weekends. That was Friday night. I had to go back a third time on Monday. I told them, I'll take the product with me if you don't listen to me. You have to move it 6 inches. I'm not going over. There's a weigh station in Colorado that's always open. He knows me. One time I went over a scale, 400 pounds over. He told me, don't go over my scale again, or I will give you a ticket for 400 over. So I made him move it 6 inches. Just 2 days ago, I ran over a scale, 34,020 pounds. And he gave me the good to go, and over the speaker said, that's how I want you. They remember us. The complexities of flatbed, I do like it. It gets me out of the truck, gets my head thinking. But wow, I mean, the shipping and then the receiver made me wait 3 hours too. It was just a bad load all the way around. But there is a lot more complexity to it.
It points out something that when we look at the full supply chain, and I spent some time in my career in the technology areas, and you wonder if you monetize all that lost time, that lost productivity time, and it sounds cliche to say time is money, but we know it is. You wonder what they could do differently, especially when you're dealing with fixed axle guys, where you don't have a lot of variables here, right?
Yeah.
And you wonder, they know, or they could know the span of your flatbed. They could know the wheelbase. They could use the algorithms and spreadsheets you're using to determine load points and center points, and they could make it easy. It's not as though they don't have all that information available before you pull into the yard. They know everything, or they can have access to knowing everything, so that they get somebody out there, with steel tape, and they drop the load right in the right spot on the back of on the flatbed. It could be done that way, couldn't it?
It absolutely could. And you bring up a great point, because I took pictures of that load. So if I go back and they do the same load all the time, exactly where it's at. Why am I taking that note? Why aren't they taking those kind of notes? Also, I've talked about this before. I think detention is something that we could, the truckers argue about a lot of things, and they don't win a lot. I think we could actually win on this detention. I think we need to take all the middle people out of it. Now, people are going to say it can't be done, but in my opinion, what I say should happen is I show up there, and after 2 hours, when detention pay starts kicking in, you need to take the companies out of it. You need to pay me, and they should be paying me on Venmo. Everybody has Venmo. You keep me over 2 hours, I'm sitting in that truck not stewing, watching every hour click by. You're paying me detention in Venmo. I'm a happy guy. You can take 2 days if you want.
Are there any shippers or companies that do that?
No, not that I know of, because I proposed it during coronavirus about 6-7 months ago, because I had waited 14 hours. And the fact is that hey, if we're going to sit there, is a company going to, now not my company pays me, but that's why they're the 8 years in a row. But there's a lot of companies that you have to fight tooth and nail to get it. And this is a huge reason for turnover. If we take everybody out of it, I walk into that shipper, it's me and that shipper doing business. If I'm professional, I know the company's a part of it, but you can't tell me, Jamin, that if they had to start taking money out of their pocket that hour, that they wouldn't fix them problems. Nothing gets fixed quickly in America if there's not a lot of money involved. You start going into their pocketbook immediately, they wouldn't make me wait 14 hours. They just wouldn't.
Yeah, that's a long time. I don't know many people that would wait 14 hours for something their job without kicking and screaming more than, and rightfully so, than drivers would.
Yeah.
And you've talked a lot about, you mentioned COVID several times. Tell us more about examples of how COVID has affected things. Is it the availability of labor? Why has it slowed things down, and what problems have been caused? And we know about the access, we know about the checkpoints, but it sounds like it's even in just routine load management and yard operations. Tell us more about what you see in COVID and how it's affected things.
It's definitely labor. It is labor. And I've had shippers and receivers apologize and say, we've got somebody new. I pick up a lot of steel plate and steel plants. Well, one of the things, and I never get political, doesn't go over well, but one of the things is they're making it more when they extended the unemployment and then gave that extra little boost to it. It's not an incentive to go out and work. There are jobs. So I'm showing up at these places that are hard to work at, and they're having a very tough time getting employees and keeping employees because of COVID and because they would rather sit at home. I'm not anti unemployment, and we all need help,
Yes.
but the incentivization is not there to work at that steel mill because it's hard work, and they're better off sitting at home on unemployment. And I've had shippers, especially the steel places, tell me a couple times that they're just struggling. And I said, there's one place in particular down in Alabama. There, I'm like, I can help you. I don't care how new that person is. If you listen to me on my trailer, and that person is new, I can get the product where it needs to be. Give me a little bit. That's another thing. Math takes time. So a lot of times, if I have the weights of the coils beforehand, I can do the math. And they listen to me and things really work out. But it's the problem when they don't listen to me. And if they may be new and say, hey, you got to stay in your truck, don't bother me. And they're struggling with getting people in there. That's kind of where COVID is really. I haven't seen this much angst in the last year of my first 7 years because of what COVID's done.
Well, it's actually the end. The load's your responsibility. It's you driving across the scales. It's you who's going to get the ticket if the load's not right, right?
That, yeah, and I had a guy. And here's another thing too: is I went to a place. They found out 2 days prior to me showing up that they were shutting the steel mill down. So you can imagine, right after the new year, and you can imagine their feelings. They're getting hit hard, and they're having a hard time. Well, the guy was loading me, one of the first ones when I was back doing my flatbed, and he was upset. And I found out that he found out that they were all losing their jobs, and he didn't want to load it the way I wanted to load it. And I said, I'm driving, I'll get the ticket. He literally went into his office and looked up a ticket. I was going across from Ohio to California, and looked up how much a ticket would cost me in California. I'm like, why are we having this conversation? I'm not getting a ticket. So, and I had to go back there a couple times too to get one coil that he wouldn't listen to me. We were moving at inches. And I'm just like, did you really do that? He went into his office and looked up the price of a ticket in California. And I've never had stuff like this happen to me pre-COVID.
Wow. Have you seen any, trying to think how to frame this up right, because obviously COVID, there's nothing positive about COVID, but as a side, positive side of it, there any positive changes in attitudes or procedures or awareness from folks during this pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's just like it's like yin or yang. Now we're talking, and I'm kind of putting, and I don't want to act like I'm getting nothing but problems from shippers and receivers, but I've mentioned this before, and you have maybe have heard it. The bad shippers during COVID just became worse. They couldn't handle it before pre-COVID, but the great thing about this is the good shippers got better. It's huge. So I could go into, and I've ran into flatbed. We're just not talking about it, but if I go in there, they understand the complications of COVID. They know I'm running through it. They're very happy I'm running through it, whether I was dry van or flatbed, and they've embraced to get better. And so, yes, there's the yin and the yang. We just been focusing on the harder parts, but I can tell almost right away, and I think almost all the drivers can, when we walk in, the first minute or two, you're like, okay, these guys know what they're doing, and COVID just made them better. It's a strange dynamic, but it's true.
The pressure amplifies, huh? And I imagine the same being true of maybe brokers you work with as well.
I haven't worked with too many brokers because I was lease purchase, not a true owner op. So I don't deal with the brokers per se, but you've heard my rants during the broker trucker brouhaha going on there. And I said, it's a lost cause. And it was a lost cause. And I've made a lot of, I don't want to call them enemies, but a lot of people don't like me on the trucker side because they think I'm pro management or think I'm pro broker. And I'm just coming from it as, pick your fights that you could win. I think we could win detention. You're not going to win against a few brokers. Yes, they can come up and say, look what this broker did to me. But overall, the experience, and it was found that the majority of the brokers were not. I mean, the economy fell. I mean, what can you do? It's a natural fall from COVID, and it was proven. And we spent all this angst and anger. And you guys, the brokers, were like enemy number one. And now all of a sudden, all that happened, and we're back to where we were pre-COVID. You guys didn't do any. Now there were some bad seeds, but there's some truckers out there that aren't all that great too.
Yeah, I like your point about it just being amplified for better or worse.
Yeah.
One of the big themes that came out of COVID, maybe beginning in April, when the shortages really started to hit, was the realization that we had pretty much across the board in the discipline of supply chain, very poor in-transit visibility. And it wasn't a matter of finger pointing at any particular mode, rail or OTR. We just didn't have the visibility that we needed. And so a lot of money has been spent in the last 6 months on improving ITV, or in-transit visibility and traceability. Do you feel that? And maybe it's a different question for you as a company driver than if you were independent, but do you see that? And has the increased attention to visibility, both at depot, across dock, in transit? People want to know where things are. It's the old, where's my stuff, but even more amplified. Have you seen any effect of that, positively or negatively, in your business?
I have. And the company that I was owner-op lease purchase, they equipped all their trailers during COVID with trackability of trailers. I think the trucks have been tracked for a while now, and they can keep track of where that is. But every single 2,000 trailers it had now has a GPS. I personally, I liked it because I'm not quite sure where the old school truck drivers have a problem with. I don't want people calling me and bothering me. And that's just my personality. I'm doing my job. And if I'm doing my job correctly, why are you calling me? And I think the visibility of truck and trailer lets people know what's really going on without calling me, without like maybe even insinuating. I may take it wrong, but they're calling me up, where are you? And I may take it like, are you checking up on me? So I think the visibility of the trailer and the truck lets everyone knows if I'm not doing my job. And if the phone call comes, is, oh, okay, maybe I should have ran 200 more miles and put some of the onus on me. I absolutely have seen it. I like it. I wish we would go totally electronic BOLs, just to let you know. I think the paper BOLs, I don't understand the pushback at that at all. I think we could do everything electronic, and the DOT officers I should be able to email them just like I email them my logs. Yep. They're like, I want to see the BOL. All right, well, I'll email them to you.
You just got to my next question. I was going to ask you about digital bills of lading, because so much of the documentation is now automatable. It's part of what we call a digital thread. We talk a lot about digital thread when it comes to product definitions and bills of material. It's a product-centric thing, but it could just as easily be a load or a line item on a bill of lading kind of thing. And why aren't we automating that all between brokers and forwarders and carriers? And what I'm hearing, not to put words in your mouth, is anything administrative you can take off my plate and let me just do what I do really well. It sounds like you would appreciate that.
Well, yes. And we just recently, the company that I work for, we have a thing, a DOT officer can give us a form and manner ticket. And it's huge. That's of CSA scores and everything. And basically us drivers get hit on, if I pick up a load, I have to put the company that I picked it up from, the BOL number, and a lot of times the date. And if I don't do that and I pull in and they ask for my logs and I email it, I get a ticket, and then the scores go up. I've been arguing for years. We get messages, not just the company I work for now. I mean, anyone is like, will you guys please just do your job? Just do your job. Your job is to fill out this electronically. My pushback, and why, when I was a director of housekeeping operations, the 3 separate places I worked at had 100% turnover, and I turned all of them around under 10%. And one of them is doing what you just said. What we have all this information at our fingertips, and you're just putting another thing on me and blaming me for a ticket when you have that information. So why can't I pick up this load? Somebody, it gets in there, whether it be the computer or somebody, they could have one person fill out every truck driver's. We're asking 300 people or 400 people to do one thing right, when you could have one person making sure 300 people do something right. It just doesn't make any sense to me to constantly, and this goes to the DOT and us being overregulated. You're going to hit me over a form and manner because I was tired and I spent 3 days at the shipper and I forgot to put the shipper's name in there? Yeah, absolutely. Ticket. when we can fix this stuff electronically, in my opinion.
We so often talk about other parts of the supply chain in product engineering and manufacturing and warehousing, and looking for areas where we can improve efficiency and reduce errors. And it's fascinating to me, Wayne, to hear you talk about the number of opportunities to do just that still exist in trucking.
Yeah, and it's always about money. When I was managing, I always had to tell people that you're spending so much money trying to recruit these people that if we can get them to stay, that's going to go away, and we're going to have more money to do more things with, and we're going to be able to see what we're really capable of doing. And this goes down to trucking. They don't want to pay one person to make sure all 300 or 400 trucks has it right. What I'm saying is okay, now you're just going to wait for that ticket. That's exactly what happened. They waited for the tickets to start coming in. The score went up. Their insurance will go up because the scores went up. You're paying one way or the other. Why not pay one person? And then that one person, I would bet what I found, that one person, I'm not saying that would be the only person's job, but once they start getting into that, oh, I could do this for them as well. Oh, wait a second, I could do this as well. You're paying on one end or the other. Why not pay before the ticket happens? That's what bothers me the most about the old school trucking is a lot of the old school CEOs that are my age now, 54 and above, they don't get it. You're paying one at one end or the other. Why not make it less fury? Why not make it easier to get where we need to go and spend the money more wisely?
I love that. Now, you making me think earlier when you mentioned Venmo and, further making that integrated into the digital thread, as Jeff put so well. It's just expediting payments as well, and less back and forth with trying to rodeo clown a bunch of literal paperwork. So I think then everyone wins in that scenario as well too.
They do, and I'll say this again, and because this is one thing that I've really been talking about. If a company, they have to stay in business and they make money, and a lot of times businesses won't change unless money's coming out of their pocket. You can't tell me that if they, after 2 hours, they start paying me directly money out of their pocket that day, that they wouldn't fix their problems. They would. They don't want to pay me. They don't want to pay the company either.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because a lot of times in the industry, when it gets talking to detention or things, you're having a conversation 30 days later when the bill comes in, and things a lot can get lost in the wash over a 30-day period of time. And then even for a company to make a correction, to go back and reverse engineer, okay, wait, what happened here? We're 30 days in the past. Heck, that person on the dock may not even work there anymore. So it makes it tough to make those corrections as well.
And they know they have issues. That's where the thing is, the shippers and receivers would lobby. This is where I think that I could stand in front of, Congress and really convince people that the shippers and receivers are going to try and convince you that they can't afford it, that it's not right, but they're the ones that basically broke it. And I'm saying they need to have us get more out of this brokenness and say, we're going to pay you for your time. I think you'd see a huge drop. I do. I think there'd be a huge issue with turnover, because us drivers would get there knowing that we're going to be treated right. And if we're not treated right, we're going to be paid for our time, and not wait for the company to say, like you said, 30. It's a lot of times, some companies I work for, you're exactly right, they wouldn't pay you for 30 days. Well, hell, I forgot by that time. I forgot that I waited and I was mad for 3 days, to pick it up. So I just think there's so much more improvement could happen with detention and with making us the wait times. And I think we should do it closer now, since we're still in the coronavirus too, because this is the heightened state of where we're at right now.
You make it work now, it'll work when and if things get back to, I don't like the term new normal or old normal, but they get back to more like they used to be, then hopefully these things will stick. Like you said, with the good shippers, they got better. Hopefully it stays that way. Something that our Supply Chain Now listeners really enjoy is when we get an expert like you on. They ask, all right, let's look into the crystal ball. What are the big issues, the big next things that from your perch you see happening? And I got a couple of preloads here I'll throw at you, but what do you think the big trends are, and what's the next 5 years of trucking look like? Any intermodal impacts, regulatory impacts, again, not politically, but what do you see happening, and what's sort of on its way to trajectory of it of a new trend that you're seeing going on now?
So doing that, I've vlogged for 8 years and blogged for 8 years. I had a lot of stuff that I've talked about. And 3 or 4 years ago, I was flatbedding and I did something about autonomous trucking. And at that point, people were saying, not in my lifetime, not in my lifetime. And I said, there's too much money to be made in autonomous trucking for it not to happen. You need to stop being the horse. And I was one of the first people to say, are you really the horse and carriage person? When Mr. Ford, he was asked in an interview, what would you have done differently if you listened to the public? He said, oh, they would have told me make faster horses.
Yep.
Well, one of the biggest things is going to happen, and I talk about turnover a lot, is I believe that autonomous trucks are going to give the trucking companies what they want, as far as how many times have we heard people just, we want to fill the seats. We have to fill the seats. And when they're filling the seats, that's where that 100% turnover, they have a base employee that may be 60 to 70%, but it's a 30% of that churn and burn. So if I have 200 trucks and I have a 30% turnover that I can't stop, autonomous trucks would give the CEOs, why don't we just buy 30% autonomous trucks and stop the churn and burn? And there will be a better, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 years, it would take over all our jobs. What I'm trying to say is that autonomous trucking, whether truckers like it or not, and if they're not happy and if they're getting tickets, be better, drive better, because the CEO is going to get that choice to say 30% of our fleet is autonomous now. And I can worry about my 70% that I wanted there anyways, and they're loyal to me. That's how I see autonomous trucks happening, a perfect blend of the good people staying and the dead weight going away. Just like the drug clearinghouse that stopped a lot of drivers from, we're a shortage, but those people shouldn't have been on the road anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I like that point a lot.
Limited routes, right? I mean, you see what they're doing in Germany and Europe with the now they're convoying them and dense packing the trailers, essentially tandeming them together. But it's very limited routes. This is true in the UK, and I know it's true in Germany as well. You see the same thing happening here. It's not going to be basically interstate wide. They're going to be routes and lanes for this, right?
Yes, and I believe I was watching Freightwaves, and I don't know if I can mention them on this, but everybody's been watching Freightwaves, and it's already happening now. And I think it was in Arkansas where Walmart was using autonomous trucks, 5, 6 of them, doing exactly like you said. So this is where I think there's going to see a real sense of, okay, could we go autonomous to do a 200-mile route back and forth, and leave some of the longer stuff to us eventually. But if you go back, University of Michigan has a great thing that they do where for autonomous cars and trucks, and they track it, and they've been working on this for quite a while. They believe it's going to really start from the cities, inside the cities, and work itself out 20, 30 years. That's exactly what you're saying. And they're top of the notch. They know exactly what's going on. And that's how I see it as well. And it's already happening. So I'll go back to the point though, if a driver is afraid of autonomous trucks and they're saying not in my lifetime, it's already happening. So you were wrong if you said that, first of all. Second of all, drive better, be better, pass your inspections like I have every one of them in 8 years. And I'm not worried about my job in autonomous trucking. Even if 30% of the lanes go away, there's shorter lanes. I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
I think that's a real healthy perspective. And Jeff, do you have any other line of questions on this particular matter? Because what I was going to do is I'm so fascinated by how you have such a high level, reasonable look at our very divisive sometimes industry. So I was going to ask a couple of questions about kind of some of your
Go ahead. Yeah. No, I was curious about the autonomous. I'm glad you touched on that, Wayne. Clearly, it's something you're following and have been for a long time. That was one that was on my list. So, Jamin, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Wayne, backing up a little bit to kind of your foundation, your approach, one of the first things that actually made you stand out on social media to me a year, 2 years back was tell us about some travels you've done in Alaska. I saw some pictures and I was super intrigued by that. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us some of your Alaska travels and applying it to what we've been talking about, how that has kind of shapes who you are and how you see our industry.
Oh, thank you for asking. I've been to all 50 states, 7 Canadian provinces, and I've been to Alaska 5 different times. And not just the first time we went up the Alaskan Highway when I was in the Navy. A friend of mine, the Wayne and Wayne show, He picked me up in Seattle from Michigan, and we drove up the entire Alaskan highway on the 50th anniversary of it. It took 30 days. That was my first time ever in Alaska. And I said, I know I'm going to be back. And I went back 4 other times to work. And not only just to work, though, I hiked alone the entire time. The first time I went back in 2010, I lived and managed in Denali National Park. And I came in early as a manager and I left late. And I hiked alone in Denali National Park the entire time. I think I went on some, oh my gosh, it was I don't want to get this wrong because by the days, but it was like 50, 60, 70 hikes alone. And I went with somebody twice. They couldn't keep up with me, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't want to go or whatever. So that was my first time of really, and I did. I just missed a grizzly bear encounter. Hikers in front of me did, and we went out together. They ended up having to tranquilize that bear. It wouldn't leave the trail that we were on, the Mount Healy Trail. So they moved it, literally moved it by a helicopter, and ran into an elk coming down the same one, Mount Healy. Coming down, you go down pretty quick. It's a huge ascent, and it was summertime, and it's still light out. And I stopped at the bottom, and I looked to my left, and there was a moose, like 4 to 5 feet in the woods right there, staring at me. Wow. And I'm like, I know. I'm like, I had my bear spray ready too. I don't know how good it would work on a moose, but he didn't bother me, and I just kept walking. And 3 other times I managed, and one time in particular, I didn't manage. I took a break from trucking for 3 months. I was in Ketchikan giving tours. I have my what do you call it, where I can drive a bus on my license as well. One of those big 50. I could work for Greyhound if I wanted to. And I gave tours of Alaska in Ketchikan and hiked alone. And yeah, I had the most tips of anybody in them 3 months because I do Alaska. But yeah, Alaska's been just for me, I don't know if I want to live up there full time when I retire. But I mean, it's just spending 6-7 months there hiking and getting to know the people. Sitka, I've been on a Baranof Island twice, and just I love it. And it really challenges me it makes me a better truck driver, to be honest with you.
We gotta have this guy back because I learned a lot about trucking, but this is like the 3rd example where this guy has talked about, I got paid to do something and I really loved it, and I got to do something else. Like the master of merging things together and figuring out how to get paid to do something he loves. I
don't know why. I don't know. I got divorced. I'm seeing my son today. And when I got divorced, I've always been that person that likes to travel. I just took advantage of it. And I don't understand. You don't have to hike alone. Take that out of it. There's so many friends and family that maybe not family, but when you get to these places, if you're good at something, like in Denali, I was the assistant manager, and the manager, my boss, was a guide to hike Mount McKinley in the 80s. I did that on purpose. She interviewed me, knew I was a huge hiker. She herself, I could have done her job because I came from management. I went there as an assistant so I could do more hiking, and her and I bounced. I mean, we were a great pair. We had the best summer ever. But my boss was teaching, or not teaching, but guiding people to get on one of the most technically difficult mountains in the world. I'm like, I'm in heaven.
That's great. So you'd mentioned that it makes you a better part of the trucking industry. Are there any specifics that you draw upon or could share with us?
Absolutely. I've posted this too, and I've posted photos of my ugly ankle. I got hurt in Denali near the end of my time there. I was out on a hike, and about 4 hours in, no cell service, I was going over a creek, and it was almost like quicksand, and my foot got stuck, and I had to rip it out. Well, I didn't know at the time. I knew something bad happened, but I heard this huge pop. I ripped the 3 tendons in your ankle out in Alaska. It took me 4 hours to get in. I had my gear. I had everything I needed. It took me 12 hours to get out. And the picture of my ankle I have all over. It was huge. It was like bigger than a golf ball. It was like a baseball. And the next day, my boss, who I talked about, she paid for the train to get me up to Fairbanks to get all this looked at. It wasn't a whole lot they could do because it was torn tendons and not broken. But that experience taught me that yes, it was extreme, but there's really nothing. Trucking can get extreme. And if you're in the snow and you're chaining up, if you keep a level head, if you keep your training, I didn't know how to chain a truck. I was taught how to chain a truck. And if I know when to stop, if I know what I need to do, I just go back to that time where, was I going to give up? Was I going to sit there and wait for someone to never show up? So I got myself out of there. And so with truck driving is a lot of times the same way. You run into a big storm, the New Mexico storm, 4 to 8 inches. And, luckily I didn't, they had to chain law like an hour and a half after I passed it. So, you have to follow the law if the lights are going, but it's just that matter of fact, like, okay, I've had something happen to me before. If I'm smart, if I'm single-handedly going, okay, I got to get this truck safe there. That's where I draw from my experiences. And I ran into, this is another perfect example that helps me in the truck. This all really started, I worked for a year. My first management I ever did was a year in Yellowstone National Park in 2006 and 2007. When I got the divorce, I left. I worked at Chrysler on the line. So I went from there to management. So one of my first hikes, by the way, I'll tell you very quickly, my life is only worth $50. Did you know that? I'm going to tell you why my life is only worth $50. It's a fact. I've made a price tag on my life. So I show up to Yellowstone and they have the employees go to a bear class where they have the expert and they talk about bear spray. And he says, and I just got there. They're like, listen, whatever's in your pocket. I had $75 in my pocket. Went there to manage to build my life back up from the divorce. And he said, you have to buy bear spray. And he said this like 5 times in the hour-long thing. Well, I got out. I was all hyped up, ready to go up there in Mammoth Hot Springs, and I didn't buy the bear spray. I had $75. I did not spend the $50. I ran into a black bear, not a grizzly, on the Beaver Pond Trail, and he was on the trail and wouldn't leave. And so I came down. I remembered what he had just said, but I kept saying in my head, all right, my life is obviously only worth $50 because I did not spend the $50 to buy the bear spray. So I had to come down to the pond, and then the bear got up and was staring at me. And I walked, it took forever, really slow motions until I got out of the sight. And then you never seen somebody run so fast. Back to the trailhead, and I spent the $50, and I've never been without bear spray since.
Great. Man, such perspective. That's what I just keep hearing is you have such a wealth of experience and perspective to draw on from so many diverse backgrounds. And I'm willing to guess we haven't even daggum scratched the surface.
Right.
Well, I enjoy. Thank you for asking about the other, personal stuff in the hiking, because I don't talk about that all that much. So I do appreciate it.
But it serves as a good example. I mean, back to the point we talked about earlier about the mental health, the physical health. It's really delightful to meet somebody who is in the middle of the infrastructure of supply chain management, who has got a balance. I don't like the cliche work-life balance, but you're certainly not a unidimensional person. I think there's a lesson there, for everyone who's listening in on this, whether they're in the trucking side of the business or some other aspect. Every part of the supply chain is under pressure now with warehouse operations, production, service repair. Everybody's got their own form of pressure, but it's kind of a lesson I'm drawing, Wayne, about finding the balance and finding things that make use of what you're doing professionally and find a way to, 1 + 1 = 3. And it's been really rewarding to hear the stories.
Well, I appreciate that. And I kind of feel that we're kind of coming to the end. I don't know, it's been an hour, but I want to give some advice to the truckers, shippers, and receivers.
Please.
We've had a hard year. And when we show up, and if you're struggling in the shipper and receiver and you're mad and upset, if I'm a trucker and I come in and I'm mad or upset, all it does is it ruins our day and it ruins everyone's week. We need to get better at just smiling when we show up. I've made, and I am guilty of, and I ain't perfect. That you should have seen me last week when all that was going on with the shipper. We just need to convince ourselves that our interactions in this business needs to be better, and we need to force ourselves to smile, even if we don't want to smile, because it is tough out here. We need drivers to stay, and we need shippers and receivers to stay. I mean, I can't tell you, I bet you $100 some shippers and receivers would tell you they've lost their employees because the trucker was getting crazy on them.
That's a good point. And those great words. And man, Jeff had said it. I think he's spot on. We'll have to have you back. And there's so many other questions that I can think of. I really appreciate it, but we also don't want to keep you from your son. I'm very excited for you guys to get to hang out.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited. And coronavirus, I knew it. I would have seen him, but it came back before coronavirus hit. it was just bad timing. But he is so excited now. His wife isn't coming; she didn't want to fly. That's fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, he
Absolutely.
wants to see me. I want to see him, and it's been almost 2 years. So I I'm just so excited overall. So he's my only son, and it's been a long time. So it's been a good vacation already. It's going to be even a better one for the next 3 days.
Heck yeah.
Well, we're grateful you chose to share a little bit of it with us. We thank you for that, Wayne. We really do. And I know our listeners will appreciate it as well. Jamin?
Yeah. So Wayne, just you had mentioned it. Give us a little homework. Where can people find you? And the homework piece of it is, and I know you mentioned the outset, but I'd love for people to go see your photos. Where can we go learn more about you through the pictures you've taken?
Okay, the pictures that I've taken is Wayne Cragg Photography and Adventures on Facebook. I think it's Wayne_Cragg or Wayne Cragg CRAGG on LinkedIn. A lot of my photos are easier seen on LinkedIn. I do need to say something about TikTok. I went over 20,000. You can find me at Wayne_Cragg at TikTok, but Scott D. Henry, one of the most famous TikTokers there is, he liked my page yesterday. I'm just saying.
Hey, there's a whole nother bit, when we talk to you again down the road. I've really appreciated seeing your journey on TikTok and how you went into that and embraced it, learning new things, putting yourself out there, being, comfortable being uncomfortable. I personally have learned a lot from you just watching that journey. So I'm grateful.
Well, it's given me an outlet. I can only talk trucking so much. So yes, I do some dancing. I used to dance a lot in the 80s when I was younger. Yes, I'm uncomfortable a lot of times, but I do think that it's a good face for people to come see that not all truckers are upset as well. That was a goal of mine, by the way, was to make my page. I knew that I was kind of limiting my audience, so to say, that I wouldn't have a million, but having 20,000, they can see that a trucker can still be happy, can still be silly, can make a lot of fun, and it's worked out pretty well. And last night, it's just a whole weird thing. The last 3 days, Scott D. Henry is close to 2 million. He's very well known. He's going to be on Tough as Nails, the television show coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And him liking my page last night was just like, okay, I might as well just quit. Shut it down. Wayne's done.
Go out on top.
That's great. No, I'd say double down. So, Jeff, any final words here before we sign off?
Nope. Just thank you, Wayne. It's been a pleasure. And we look forward to speaking with you again and following your adventures. Thanks very much for your time.
Can't thank you two enough for having me on. I really appreciate it and had a great time. Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you so much to our audience. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have. And on that note, be sure to check out a wide variety of industry thought leadership at supplychainnow.com. And you can find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. So check us out. We'd really appreciate it. And on behalf of myself and Jeff and the entire Supply Chain Now team, want to say thank you. And this is always Scott Luton's sign off. I love it. So I'm going to actually steal it for this episode because it goes right in line with Wayne's advice to us all. Do good, give forward, and be the change that's needed. All right, everybody. Appreciate you.